This region around the Great Lakes has been called the heartland. When it comes to agriculture, there's hardly an area in the world that compares.
Everybody, just hold on. I don't know what we're going to have here.
There's a lot of self-proclaimed geniuses out there that know the national yield, but they're all wrong.
Manage money, piling in.
Double digits higher.
So at this point, we're in kind of uncharted territory.
There's a lot of money on the sidelines.
So that was a crazy one.
That's what brings the viewers back. That a boy.
Good morning, everybody. It's Wednesday, November 12th, and this is the AgYield War Room. I'm Dan Dempsey, and I'll be moderating today's session. As always, if you get any questions or comments, please feel free to drop us a line in the chat area. We'll be sure to get to it during the show. Overnight markets here, December corn down a half at 431.5. January soybeans were down a half also at 11.26 3/4. And December Chicago wheat was down 7 3/4 at 5.28 1/4. Government is still shut down, so we got no export sales here. However, it looks like later today we should get reopened. Set to vote here early this afternoon is what they're calling for. So we'll keep our eyes open to see what shakes out there in Washington. And as we mentioned yesterday, we keep grinding towards our first USDA and WASDE report there. Since for a while, so we'll get some fresh data. Justin, I guess we'll kick it off with you here this morning. Interesting to see overnight, this COFCO deal. However, it seems pretty well in line with business that would be done, but still just kind of a bad look, given that they've got to do 12 million before the first of the year with us. So, people chirping a little bit about that here this morning.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a frame contract that they do every year as part of that. They used to do those with us, if we remember back in the day. Mm-hmm. They come sign a big deal for, we'll purchase, 20 million tons of beans, which was more a PR piece. But yeah, no, I get your point. And I think it's kind of part of the Bean Conundrum. We've had this big rally. It's holding really well going into this report, but just, it's tough to be bullish. I'm one of them, but it's hard without, the evidence to back it up. Now that you've had this big move and you're at 15, 16-month highs and you're not seeing any concrete evidence of this 12 million tons, right? So, it's not just the 12 million tons. It's like, well, if the 12 million tons doesn't happen, can you rely on the 25 for next year and so on and so forth? So a lot of stuff to get done. Hopefully the government opening, maybe just more stuff starts flowing news-wise and progress-wise. So I think that's optimistic, obviously, that we're opening. It'd be nice if, we pay these people, these senators, like maybe show up to work early and vote early. These people haven't been paid for 40 some days. So
how about it?
And maybe you could work a little overtime to get it done, but we're getting there. And I just keep going back to, I think we get so much data the next, call it week to 10 days. That's going to be very key.
First export sales report's going to be interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, all of it. Commitment of traders. All the things we've talked about. I look at D's 26 corn, for example. We're at 470, so we're kind of knocking against month highs, and we're 7 cents away from 16-month highs, 18-month highs. So, I think the back end of the market. I think the market in general is being supported like optimistic on what's coming. Ben and I were talking about this yesterday. You're at really key levels here and you're getting all this data. And I think options are super cheaply priced for what could happen the next 2 to 3 months, up or down. I know we've been saying this for a while, but I think that's still true. The second we stop going up or down, they pound on volatility. And I think we're at some really key areas here where you got to be kind of open-minded on what prices could do up or down from here. So that's just kind of my take, just as a general observation.
Sure, and the math of it. There's discussion this morning. So we went from like a 23% to 13% tariff still on beans, right? And it feels like that 13% is just pricing us out, or making us expensive relative to South America. So, I think, if we could just trim that number, we probably, just economically, we could go pick up business, at least from the private buyers,
Yeah, what's interesting to that point is, how big was that South American crop?
Right.
China bought 100% from them. They were getting all the business. I actually thought we were getting to a tipping point where they were, because they started saying, before this deal, they were going to start cutting into reserves and, not purchasing anything basically to avoid purchasing US. Then they cut a deal, supposedly, right? And their basis just collapsed to get competitive again. So two things that I think are interesting is, one is I thought, they were kind of getting tight on beans down there. And two was I thought once that happened, corn exports would start flowing dramatically from there with the safrinha crop. And those two things haven't really come to light yet. So those are kind of two head scratchers for me personally.
And it could that, so I guess peeling back the onion, I mean, short crop or not as big a crop, or, I mean, tied up logistics.
I don't know. I mean, I think,
yeah,
the soybean crop is obviously massive, which we knew, but you just realize how big it was. On the corn side of things, I don't know. I don't know the answer. I don't know if you guys have any insights, especially with, maybe it's the currency move that's helping. Maybe it's the domestic consumption that's really been ticking up, that's still sucking in corn. But I really don't know.
Dustin, what's your thoughts this morning?
Yeah, I mean, we can't forget how much of a rally we've had, especially for beans. And, I think there's a lot of optimism, and this is the time of year where you get the post-harvest lockup where a lot of people want to be bullish. But I think Justin said it right. Like, you have to be skeptical, especially with China not really showing any sort of interest to, I would have thought they would have come out of the gate immediately with some sort of a, massive buying just to kind of show face. But, they haven't. They didn't do it the first round, though, to be fair, too. Like phase one, like everyone kind of thought there's no way they were going to even attempt to try to do anything there. And then they ended up doing it the last half of the year. But we're supposed to be seeing this by the end of the year. So we have a few weeks. It's not like, it's not like we're going to know this pretty quickly.
So Dustin, to that, I was, doing the math of it, right? So basically it's 440 million bushels, 12 million tons. So it's 88,000 contracts, futures contracts. So they could have easily, and I'm not saying it's true, we don't know what's been happening, commitment of traders. Obviously every break's been bought in the futures, on the flat price. And people are like, well, basis isn't following. We're not seeing, all the demand show up. Who's to say they didn't just buy get the futures covered, and maybe they are booking some other, freight, or, maybe they can swap bushels. And there's all sorts of games you could play to get that kind of coverage.
I know.
I'm not trying to put a tinfoil hat on here, but I'm just saying, if they knew they had to buy it, the China, government, COFCO, and these other state-sponsored buyers could have easily just put a position on too. They could have put a bunch of options and had optionality to it. There's a lot of ways that, they're pretty savvy traders. Who's to say that they weren't the ones buying it here? Everyone's like, why is this thing still staying up? We're not getting any confirmation. I mean, there's several different ways to play that if they had to buy it.
Right. Yeah. Why wouldn't they'd get their coverage on before they agreed to anything, I would think, too. Because why wouldn't they?
Right.
Ben, what's your thoughts this morning?
I definitely am a believer that they were a buyer or a willing buyer at set price in the November bean contract. There was aggressive belief to be China put selling on every break. Despite the bearish narrative that pervaded the market between 980 and 1050, there were buyers there, and there were at times aggressive buyers on breaks. So, maybe they do have their board coverage, and trying to negotiate logistics. PNW bean basis spiked right after the announcement, came back off, and then firmed up again last night. So you don't know how that part of it works out. And, that's not just a seismic shift for our markets. That's a seismic shift for logistics and getting things moving. And that means getting it moving from on farm if needed, commercial, getting it loaded and getting it shipped and unloaded. So those things take a little bit of time, and we don't know. And this report is, I was thinking back, I can't think of a larger data dump ever in the time that I've been in this business. I think particularly because of the uncertainty of how sales have been in the last 5 weeks. And I think because we are going to get our first actual, yield check type of yield, which should have been in the October report. So as my high school chemistry teacher would say, if all the ifs and buts were candy and nuts, what a wonderful world it would be, right? You can go through any scenario here to build bullish, build bearish. Ultimately, I think the market is pretty good at sniffing things out sometimes before we see data. So it'll be interesting not only to see the different data points that are needed to be digested, but also market reaction, and then follow that up with a COT report, right? And that could be maybe we get a supportive corn number and we find out that they're max long already. I don't know. I can't explain 99 million acres on paper today, a yield that's 6.5 bushels larger than what we've ever seen before. And here we sit 40 cents off our lows, and we've been, essentially 30 to 40 cents off our lows for the better part of 5 weeks. So is it a rug pull? I don't know. I think you're going to find buyers in corn on the break for sure. And I don't know that the bean buyer is necessarily going to be wholeheartedly spooked out anytime soon. And when I say, I'm not talking about a 30 or 40 cent break, I'm talking about dollar, back to where we started this from, which is about $1 now.
Dustin, something to add there?
I was just going to kind of talk about that, like, as if you just talk about the report coming up, the average guess, just some quick math of average guess versus average carryout suggests that the usage is going to go up in the USDA's numbers, and the yield's going to go down, which I don't think is very typical of how the USDA would react. I know they're probably going to make an adjustment because we've had so much demand, and we have, even though we haven't had export sales reports, we've seen the export inspections come through very strong still. So we're running ahead of schedule on export sales. That demand side, no question, very strong. But to also have ethanol and feed as strong as they have it without making adjustments on a production revision, I don't think is very probable. So like the average estimates is assuming demand's going to go up a couple 100 million bushels. I think we're setting ourselves up for disappointment if yield is anything above 184 or even 184. I think that you're going to print a higher carryout number, in my personal opinion.
Very good. We got a couple minutes here. Let's move over to Livestock for a minute. Ryland, kind of become desensitized a little bit. We got $3 to $5 moves that are just kind of feeling like we're chopping around in cattle, and it's starting to shape up like hogs have a cash problem. So, what are your thoughts here as we start today?
Yeah, it really just felt like a muted session overall. We were seeing kind of mixed two-sided trade. We did see a little bit of cash trade yesterday, 227 in Iowa. So even though that was $1 lower from last week, we really haven't seen the bulk of activity in the South. I think generally speaking, South likely to carry a premium a little bit. Just seems like the North is kind of well supplied right now. So I think that's something to watch. And I think the cash outlook this week is still relatively steady. And we've seen this little bear market rally. But at this point, I think the looming concern about what the administration could come out with next to expand their crusade to lower beef and cattle prices, just kind of keeps a damper on things. So we still seeing some pretty heavy liquidation here, even on yesterday's kind of quiet session down. Open interest was down 2,500 contracts there. The hogs down almost 7,000 contracts. So just seems like the big bullish presence that was in the protein markets is starting to wane. It just isn't there right now. It looks like it's just been risk off, and it could stay that way for some time. So on the hog side of things, cash actually dipping below last year's levels at 82.12. So just haven't really been able to find some good news here. Carcass still down as well. You had bellies down almost $6 yesterday. So still seeing more of the same right now. So hopefully we can see some support start to develop in the cash market, or even on the carcass side, kind of stall things out. But as of right now, just not a lot of good news here.
Very good. Appreciate the update. We just came into the open here. Got December corn down 3/4 now at 431 1/4. Jan soybeans are down 1 3/4 at 11.25 1/2, and December Chicago wheat is down 7 3/4 at 5.28 1/4. Appreciate everybody that tunes in on a daily basis. If you wouldn't mind, throw us a like and certainly subscribe. Doesn't cost you anything to do so, and it'll keep you up to speed on everything that's going on with AgYield. So again, thanks to everybody that supports the show. We're doing this live every day that the markets are open on X, Facebook Live, and YouTube Live at 8:15 Central Time. Appreciate the thoughts and comments here this morning, guys. It was a good show. Hope everybody has a great day, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.
The War Room is proudly presented by AgYield. For over 50 years, the AgYield team has provided grain marketing and risk management solutions for growers across the country. Our veteran consultants harness cutting-edge technologies to pinpoint risk, optimize market performance, and protect your farm's profitability. Discover a new approach to farm revenue management at agyield.com.
Hey guys, Jack here. Be sure to support the show by hitting the like button, leaving us a comment, and subscribing to the channel for all the latest updates. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.